Character creation is a huge part of Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. Whether it's your first playthrough or your 500th playthrough, you are really going to want to fine-tune this process. So in this video today, I'm going to be talking about some of the cultural decisions you can make as far as selecting your culture in the very beginning, as well as how some of these options that you choose going through the character creation process can actually affect your mid to late game. In this, we'll discuss your stats, as well as focus points. And at the very end of the video, I'll kind of break down the skill menu and how I really see it working. It's kind of a confusing mess as it is right now, and we are still in early access, so there's a big caveat there. So do keep that in mind. Take some of this with a grain of salt, but a lot of these decisions might shift or change as we get closer to a full release of Mount & Blade 2. So we're going to dive in here, take a look, and we're just going to create a character together. I'm going to explain some of the skills, what each one of these hash marks mean, and how some of these decisions are, again, going to affect your gameplay. Let's dive right on in. So here we are at the character culture selection screen. Now, before we get started here, I do want to say if you haven't restarted your game since all the patches came out and you purchased right when early access went live, I strongly encourage you to take this time to make a new playthrough. You will experience a lot of the big things that the patches fixed in their entirety without waiting for them to enter your game, or they just might not ever enter your game depending on when you created your save. So I strongly encourage it. But let's jump in onto this culture. Now, the cultural selection screen, if you have a specific role-playing portion in mind, then go with that. I want to encourage you guys to make the characters that you want to make, not the characters that is, min-max optimize the best. I'm going to talk about some cultural benefits that I find to be extremely beneficial, and the other ones that I find to be just a little bit more niche and not necessarily helpful 100% of the time, or even maybe 50% of the time. So let's take a look at Valandians. This is probably one of my favorite ones because it gives you 20% more upgrade XP to troops from battles. That's basically free fighting for you. So you don't have to send your troops off to as many battles against looters because you're constantly going to be getting more experience per fight that you do. So I think the Valandians is, or they have maybe the best, if not one of the best, cultural benefits because this game is geared so heavily towards war, especially in the mid to late game where that's primarily what you'll be doing. Now, the next one I want to talk about is Khazaits. Now, this one is really good too. 10% extra speed bonus for horsemen on campaign maps, meaning that you're going to be moving a lot faster, well, 10% faster to be exact, when you're trying to chase down other armies, when you're trying to chase down looters, bandits, everything like that. So I find this one to be an all-comers cultural benefit that isn't just relegated to very specific scenarios. So I really like this one. Now, the last one that I think is very beneficial, the other three I find a little bit more niche. The other one I like is Battanians. Now, this one gives you 10% less speed penalty when you're in a forest. Now, you're probably going to say to yourself, what's any difference between this one and the Stygian one? Well, this is to parties. So all of your parties get this benefit, not just you. So I find this to be extremely beneficial, especially the way that the campaign map is created. You'll have little tiny portions of forests that are like 3 or 4 trees that will slow you down significantly with a weird radius around it. So I think that the Battanians' cultural benefit allows you to get around the map a lot easier. The Stygians one, which we'll talk about next, is for me a little too niche. It's 20% less speed penalty from snow, and it only applies to you. And the only people that are going to have this are other Stygians and Sea Raiders or Stygian NPC factions. So really, I find this one to be not as beneficial. And it is true that during the winter portions of the game, the snow does stretch down to about the midway point, just a little bit above that. So you will be dealing with snow with the top half of the map and half of the year that you're playing. So it can be beneficial, but I honestly think that the Battanians one is more beneficial because you're going to get the forest penalty reduced across all of your parties, not just you. Now, the other one on this list, I'm pretty much doing this in order of most to least valuable in my mind, and I think that this is depending on the character you want to play. I personally don't find trade characters very enticing, but if you want to make a trade empire character, the Asteroid trait is going to be for you. Caravans are 30% cheaper to build. Now that seems like a lot on paper, but if you take a look at it, a caravan costs 15k to make, and if 30% cheaper means it's 12,750 gold or dinar to make. So it's not saving you that much money on the caravan. And at the point that you're going to be making caravans, you probably have enough that 15k is not going to be too scary. And especially towards the mid to late game, that thing's just completely useless. Now, 10% less trade penalty does double up the very first perk in the trade tree. So you can actually not get that perk and get the opposite perk in the trade tree, because perk number 1 is a 10% less trade penalty. I think it's to trade goods, or the other one is to equipment. So you can choose the opposite in this case and get a double up if you want. So this is nice because it's basically like a free skill perk. But again, if you're not going to go heavy into trade, I think this one is, again, a little too niche. Now, I think the least advantageous cultural benefit is Empire. This one, in my mind, just doesn't help you. By the time you are constructing towns, cities, what are those things called? Castles. This is just not that beneficial. 20% construction speed bonus to town projects, wall repairs, and siege engines. I could see it being beneficial for the siege engines, but I think for the other things, it's just not that valuable because the other stuff is so passive. In the current iteration of the recording of this game, in early access, there's not much to the management system to make town projects and wall repairs need to have that 20% boost from a cultural benefit. I'd rather choose the 20% extra experience from Valandians. But that kind of goes over our cultures right now. And again, choose the one that makes the most sense for you and your playthrough. I don't want to pigeonhole you guys one way or another. Let's get moving on into our character creation screen. Let's just choose a bald bearded guy, because if you're not making a bald bearded character like myself, what are you making? So from here, you're going to choose your family. Now, all of these kind of depend on which skills you want to choose. One thing to kind of note about all these skills is in their current phase, as they are right now, all skills have a base of 5 starting skill points. Every time you click one of these, you'll get a focus point in it. During the character creation, every focus point you invest in a skill will increase it by 10. So for instance, if I put 5 focus points into polearm, I will start with 55 polearm. So that's what you should look for when you're taking a look at those focus points. In addition, you will also get 1 statistic or attribute bonus with all of your corresponding focus point bonuses. So 10 skill level and 1 focus point to writing and polearm, 1 attribute point to social. So this is what's how this is gonna work. We're gonna move through some of this real quick. We're gonna get some bonuses, and then it'll kind of play out at the end. And we'll talk about the skill menu at the very end of this video. But one thing to keep in mind with this, you wanna just choose things that are gonna make the most sense for the kind of playthrough you want. Now, I would recommend 1 or 2 weapons. So for instance, let's do something like polearm, one-handed, and then writing. So I think you should have 1 or 2 weapons, a movement skill between riding or athletics. Athletics is going to be on foot, riding is going to be on horseback. I would completely ignore the cunning section unless you want to focus on that personally. There are so many companions that have cunning as part of their skill sets that it's just not worth investing in yourself, and tactics will improve on its own very easily. Now for social, I think that this is the one that you want to focus on the most. Now, maybe not from a focal point, or from like focus points, but from an actual attribute stat. I think having this at 4 or 5 is very beneficial. They've only recently released more companions that give you steward and trade skills. So I think that this one is a very big, crucial focus for the main character. So just to recap, 1 or 2 weapon skills between one of these and one of these probably. I think it's really, again, advantageous to do like 1 melee and 1 ranged, or if you want to make a pure knight, polearm and one-handed, which you're going to want to do. So, and then 1 of your transport skills, either riding or athletics, and then a heavy focus into social. So we'll do a Baron's Retainer here, just to kind of get this moving along. We'll do a skill with horses, and I think I didn't touch on this, but Steward skill is going to increase so fast because you're going to assign yourself as a quartermaster in the clan menu, and that'll increase your steward skill very quick as long as you're supplying your troops with a large food variety. And medicine, just go hire the surgeon or the healer or the willow bark character, and they'll take care of your surgeon stuff. And you can hire an engineer to take care of engineering. I think these 2 are not as important unless you're really trying to focus on it. And another thing here is, another one should be like, oh yeah, urban blacksmith. Smithing is going to increase on its own if you're smelting properly, like you should be doing to make a lot of money. I covered that in my fast money making guide, but smelting things down is like chief amongst making money in this game. So smithing, you can invest into it if you really want to, but I think that your points are better spent across your combat skills and social skills to start out, because smithing is going to increase so passively with the amount of refining and smelting that you're going to do. Just drop focus points into it at the very end of the game if you really want to do that, or as you progress through the game. So Baron's Retainer, we'll start right there for some riding and polearm, the social skills. We'll do Way with People. It's a bonus social skills, again, giving us leadership and charm. Charm, I think, is pretty crucial. It helps you out a lot with your dialogue options when you're taking certain quests. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second here. Moving forward to, you choose your adolescence, and we'll just do, again, choose these as you see fit. We'll do Sold Produce at the Market. Increases our social once more. We'll get some nice charm bonus, and we'll get one click into trade here. And now this one you should take heed on. So your youth is going to determine what your loadout is. You see how each one of these changes what my character is wearing, changes his armor. It's not entirely crucial. I would more focus on the skills than your loadout. But if you're trying to say, like, well, why don't I ever start with a sword and shield? Well, it's because you chose Join the Skirmishers and you only start with a sword here. So take a look at your loadout if you're having an issue with what you're starting with, but like I said, you're going to replace that so quickly, you're better off looking more towards the skills and not towards the actual starting gear, but it's at least just something to kind of take note of. So we'll do Trained with the Cavalry, perhaps. Yeah, just train with Cav. And the reason I'm doing this is just because I'm trying to focus on polearm and riding here. And so this last one, and this kind of goes in a little bit further with the conversation portion of the game. So at the very bottom of this, you see one attribute point to vigor, but 1 to valor and 20 to renown. Renown is what you use to rank up your clan tier throughout the game. If you don't start with this renown, it's okay. It just means you have to grind up 20 more than another one of these young adulthood choices. Like a lot of these are 10, 10, 5, 5, and 5. So at most, you'd be grinding up an extra 15 renown. If you want to put that into comparison, that's like 5 tournament wins or just a series of other bandit fights or mercenary fights. It's not that huge. So don't look at renown and go, well, man, this is really going to hinder my playthrough. It's not. The other thing, though, is your valor. Valor, calculating. These guys don't get any bonuses. Valor here. This is mercy, generosity, and honor. Those things do have an effect. So when you do conversation choices, you can use stuff like your mercy score, your generosity score, your honor score, your charm score, stuff like your roguery. So this is where roguery or charm or mercy, generosity, and honor all come into play. You want to kind of look at these and go, well, what kind of character do I want? Do I want to be this honorful? Do I want to be this gracious kind of character? Do I want to go with generosity? Do I want to be merciful, which I meant to say instead of honorful? So honorable is the word I was looking for. So you kind of want to look at those and go, well, this is fit the kind of character I want. If you're thinking about this from an RP standpoint, personally, I think I go here almost always just because it jumps in 20 renown and I always have a combat skill. And if I look at my character here after the next one, I get to choose one last one, and we'll go with Rode Off on a Fast Horse. Now, the reason behind this is we're going to go with riding here. We'll press next, and we get kind of like a final little thing here. You can choose some different names and whatever. So just to kind of finalize this before we jump into the skill screen, because the skill screen is important, it's going to finalize this whole video here. And as a quick disclaimer on that, the skill screen might be a little confusing, so if I do confuse you, I apologize. Here's going to be the quick too long didn't read to this. Basically what you have to know is your focus points, these little hashes, are going to increase the rate at which you learn a skill, multiplied by your overall attribute score. Your attribute score is going to increase it even more. So when we take a look at the skill screen, you'll be able to see. But if you look at this here, we have our combat skills at 3, our movement skills at 4, our social skills at 5. And that just so happened to be the way we selected it. It's not necessarily a rhyme or reason to that. But the main thing here is that your riding is going to go up very quickly and very passively as long as you're doing a lot of stuff from a horse. If you're riding people down and chopping them apart with a one-handed weapon or a two-handed weapon, or you're using your couch lance to pull arm smash someone off of a horse or kill peasants with the couch lance, it's going to increase these respective combat skills and your riding. The same thing with all of your ranged abilities. If you shoot someone in the head from a distance, it's a harder shot. The game awards you more experience to both riding, if you're on horse, and to your bow, or your crossbow, or to your throwing axe, or not trident, but your harpoon, whatever it is. Now, conversely, if you want to do that for athletics, you just have to do it on foot. Moving around the campaign map, doing tournaments on foot, or on horseback, all will increase your riding and your athletics. And again, these two skills, tactics and scouting, which I haven't really touched on. Tactics will increase passively as you play the game, but you can hire up a companion to deal with that. Same thing with scouting. Scouting will allow you to see the track that another army is taking or other factions, so you can see which direction big armies are moving, the higher the skill, and the further distance away that you can see them relative to yourself. So again, the whole cunning section you can just find companions for. So again, hopefully social will be the thing that really kind of brings you into your late game as you deal with more characters and talk to more nobles and notables to get a little bit more benefit out of that. So let's dive here into the skill menu before we close our video out. And again, quick disclaimer up front, that is going to be a little confusing. I do talk about a lot about numbers and what each focus point does or attribute does as far from a numerical standpoint. And it is kind of a hornet's nest, but bear with me, and I hopefully should give you guys some good information on this skill system. All right, so here we are at this skill screen of our freshly created character. And as you can see, the 3 focus points make riding at level 35. Now, what you have to look at here are a number of things. You have got your attribute points on your left, like I was saying. You've got your focus points, which are individually here. You've got your learning rate, and you've got your learning limit. Now, your learning limit is not the cap in which you can learn a skill. It just simply affects your learning rate. So for instance, once you get past 20 steward, it's going to slow down the rate in which it will natively or naturally increase. And honestly, that's not that big of a deal. I mean, steward, like I said, is going to go so fast that you will never even notice it was only at a learning rate of 4x. Now, each one of your individual focus points will increase your learning rate. Now, it'll increase that magnitude by 1.82. Every time you do it, it'll say that it increases it just a little bit. And I tried to find the formula for how your base, where it says intelligence 22.18, every individual attribute point increases that number by 10.73, but the total number below is not a standard. I mean, that total of 4 is base plus intelligence divided by 6. You've got 6 total skills. But if you take a look at this one, for example, it is, if I do the same math, it divided by 6, it's not the same thing. Same thing here. So I'm not too sure what this total number is really based off of. And if you do know, please let me know in the comment section below. I do want to make sure that the most accurate information is out. And this might change around the time early access ends. But essentially, you'll be investing your focus points in the skills that you want to really invest in, and you'll also be increasing the magnitude or learning rate in which your skills increase by increasing that of your attributes. So again, each focus point increases your learning rate by 1.82, and then your individual attributes increases the learning rate for all 3 skills in that corresponding section by around 10.73. I can't really 100% tell you that. I'm sorry, it increases that number right there that says endurance plus 43.64, it increases that by around 10.73. And I think that's got diminishing returns the higher you go in your respective attributes. So don't expect to get to 10 ability and see, 100.73. I think that's probably not what it's going to become. But each one of these has diminishing returns as you go higher and higher. Now, taking a look up here as well, you have your learning limit for this. Your skill focus is really high because we get, I think it's 30, I believe, right? Yeah, 30 per focus point. it's going to increase your skill focus here, and it'll also, again, increase your learning rate like we were talking about. But you have your individual perks, and these you select as you go through your skill tree. So boom, we choose Vigorous. Okay, now we have 6% to horse hit points. Full arm, boom, extra 3% to our hit points. And some of these, though, will tell you, okay, this is only if you're the party leader or it's personally attributed to you. Or if you look at Steward, some of these will say, actually, I know engineering here. This is the governor. If you or your companion is a governor, the speed of building castles and walls is increased by 30%. So look at those little tags before you select a skill or the skills of your companions to make sure they're in line with the way you want to build that character or yourself. So hopefully this gave you a better idea on how to create your character for your second or third playthrough, or for your very first playthrough of Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord. I know I probably have like 5 or 6 playthroughs of this game, and every time I find out something catastrophically new. So, like I said, take a lot of this information with a grain of salt. It will change as we get more patches through early access, and I will always do an updated videos of these once we release to the full product of the game. So that stuff is kind of up to snuff with the current iteration of the game. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Please let me know in the comment section below if you've discovered something different about skills that I maybe glossed over. I didn't hit 100%. I do want to make sure that most accurate information is out as possible. But don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment below, all that kind of fun action. But as always, have a good one and take care.